Hi, I'm Owen Spencer. I've been wrestling longer than I can remember with two older brothers. I tagged along to practices and tournaments at a very young age. In grade 2, I went to my first wrestling camp in the summer. I met Seth, and we've been wrestling partners ever since. In middle school, I officially joined the Alberni Wrestling Club at Neal. Um, Wrestling has been such an important part of my schooling experience and something I've always enjoyed participating in. I I have met many people over the years, gained friends, had role models to look up to, coaches to guide me, and I've enjoyed traveling, many tournaments, the competitions I've been in, locally, provincially, nationally. Wrestling has taught me so many things and helped me shape me into the person I am today. It has taught me how to apply myself. It's taught me how to be a team player, how to give back to my community through volunteering and fundraising. It has shown me that with dedication and commitment and hard work, great things can happen and be achieved. I would like to thank all my coaches who have helped me and supported me over the years as I move on, knowing that Alberni Wrestling Club will still be a part of what I do.
Hi everyone, my name is Duncan McLeod, in case you don't know me. I know this is not how we expected this night to go, but here we are. Being a wrestler is something I know will stick with me forever. This community has really shaped me into the person I am today. As many of you know, I've always considered wrestling as my second sport, but it is the sport that has taught me the most about life in general. When I started wrestling, it taught me that you must put the time and effort in to become good at something. I started wrestling in the 6th grade, but didn't really have the passion to continue, so I quit. At the time, I never thought that I was going to step on a wrestling mat again. But the Coultharts never took no as an answer. They would always be pressuring me into trying it out again one day. That one day was in grade 8. On that day, I would never have imagined the experiences I have had. This club truly is a family. I know the friendships within this family will last me a lifetime. I would like to say thank you to John for always pushing me and really inspiring me to be better every time I step on the mat. Thank you, Russell, for always having an example from my match that I can improve on and always being a straight shooter with me. Thank you, Chris, for taping me up and always making sure my wrestling partner made it to practice. Shout out Bobby. Thank you, Rochelle, for always magically being in my corner and being the first person to give me a hug whether I won or I lost, despite she was like the busiest person at every tournament. And thank you to the Coultharts for encouraging me and adopting me into their family at many times. And thank you to my teammates for always making sure I had fun all the time, and especially Scotty and Paige. In classic Duncan fashion, I waited to the last minute to get my name on that banner, but I'm so happy I did. It's been a good ride, and I'm so grateful for all the hard work that everyone's put in. Thank you for listening, and good night.
Don. Okay. The Alberni Wrestling Club is less of a club and more of a family. I know we all say it constantly, but I don't think the extent of what we are all saying is really given justice. We have so many generations and such a wide age range that we have in some cases two or three generations in the club. As corny as it may sound, I didn't choose the sport chose me. I was born into the club. I really had no choice. I was there for every Alberni invite, awards night, almost every awards night, and a lot of fundraisers. From the time I was around 3 weeks old. This family has been all I've ever known, and I'm very thankful for that. But over time, it becomes less of a forced ordeal and more of a choice. Pardon me. And for many who stay with it, a lifelong obsession. We end up being very close to the people we train, travel, and share all these memories with. For most, the sport is discovered once we enter school. But for some, it's just there. We are there. And then, over time, you realize the pieces that go along with being born into the club. When I was little, I was thrown around countless times into garbage cans, on my head, and who knows where else, what else. And at the same time of being thrown around and more or less abused, you also at the same time feel cared for and protected. You don't realize the full extent of this until you get it the other way and find yourself on the other end of the table. You realize how much of a shithead you were, because now you're 18 and the new set of little kids is coming, and just like you, they're hanging off of you, annoying you, poking at you, and you realize what you were. I've been fortunate enough to experience both ends of this. I was thrown around and beaten on by all the older guys like Cody McAvey and Michael Kappas for the first who knows how long of my life. And now, I'm starting to realize the flip side of that. I go to a tournament or some wrestling related event and I have all these little kids hanging off of me or stealing my hat or something of that nature. It's really cool to finally understand how it all works. I've always been told it takes a village to raise a child, and I think this club, this family, is a great example of that. The club represents so many people who have affected not just my own, but everyone else's lives in their own way. And I think this is part of what is making this video speech so hard for me. I'm not going to be able to look out over the room to improvise if I think I forgot someone I feel is important to my life and story. I don't want to forget somebody who's done a lot for me and then realize it later and feel bad. Because we have such a large group, there are a lot of people who, in their own ways, support us. So it has taken me a while and a few tries to not only figure out how I want to go about starting this, but also who I want to include in it and who I want to thank. So I'll give it the best shot I can, and if I don't end up mentioning you or I miss you, nothing personal. I just have a lot of people I have to fit in. I guess I'll start at the top. Tom, you have done so much for the club and me over the years, managing and organizing everything, coaching, and holding events like the coaches' dinner at your house. You're responsible for guiding the club in its growth to provide the athletes now and over the years with the opportunities we have. I remember being little and going to your office at VAS with my mom to deal with fundraising stuff. I don't know why this is one of those things that sticks with me, but I just remember that. Johnny Mac, I don't think I'd be where I am as an athlete or a student today without your coaching style and practices. It definitely put us through the pain while allowing us to develop the way we can. You always say that the thing that gets us through those long matches and late match scrambles is the runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I will argue that all day. I'd say it's your habit to get distracted during live, because we all know 3 means 5, and 5 is up in the air. If you hear 5, it might be a long night. I think I can speak for the whole team in saying Chris is always there to keep us together physically. If it weren't for Chris, half of us would probably have physically fallen apart from one joint or another at one time. He's always there to tape us up and tell us what the weird mark on our arm is, and if we don't know, probably just tape it to be cautious just in case so we can get a good practice in. It is definitely better than sitting out because of a sore ankle or a dead worm that is still pretty sketchy looking. I think we can all agree to say we put Jeanette through the most stress and frustration though, because not only does she have all the minor athletes to organize, she has Russ and John. Sorry guys, we'd be screwed without her. That's the truth. If it were not for Jeanette, we would probably have a significantly higher amount of forgotten athlete stories. For example, we had a trip without you this year, and room check was an hour late, and the only head count we had was at ADSS before we left, and I think you were there for that. So if it doesn't prove my point, I don't know what will. Russ. I really just want to thank Russ for being Russ. Most of you will understand what I mean by that. Just running around, herding us into rooms, or help move mats at lunch because none of us bothered to pay attention to the news. He's also the coach that'll just throw himself at the table when a call should be disputed, not caring whether he gets a yellow card or if he's already had one that day for the same thing. he just goes kamikaze to deal with it. Rochelle, thanks for being our draw person and putting all the late nights to organize the brackets so we have a tournament, and then fixing the problems and mistakes when you let somebody else do it and something goes haywire. Thank you to Aaron Anchor for allowing me to come out since grade 2 and train with the middle school kids at a young age. I'd also like to thank her for letting me come out and help coach the Neil Elementary School team to show my love of the sport to the next round of athletes. Moving on to my friends and teammates, I'll mention a few, but I know there's a lot I just don't have the time needed to do justice. Just know you all mean a lot to me, and I wish you could go through everyone. I wish I could go through everyone. Let's start at the beginning. Isaac. Isaac has been my wrestling buddy for the whole run. 18 years we ran around the tournaments and tormented the older kids and parents. I don't know how many hours he spent pushing me around the multiplex on a mat trolley or exploring every little space we could get into. My cousin Seth. Some of the earliest things I remember was having wrestling matches on your trampoline and getting to the point where we weren't allowed to do it anymore because we both kept getting hurt. Now they make us wrestle at practice because I'm bigger, and I guess it's good for you, but I'm still not seeing how the frustration on my end is good for me. Paige and Owen, my camp traveling buddies. I don't think I would have been able to go by myself because it's just confusing over there. I was honestly looking forward to seeing how Owen, Seth, and myself would have done by ourselves without Paige to keep us organized and more or less make all the plans. I'm definitely going to miss our trips to SFU camps. Mason, Jace, and Connor. You guys have been my training partners and throwing dummies since the beginning of middle school. Jace was my major push for a lot of years, so I was driving to catch up and ultimately beat him. Over our last couple of years in high school together, it was really good back and forth. I win one, you win one. I win one, you win one. And it just helped me create what I am today. Mason and Connor have been the new push for me though, making me realize if I don't keep developing or learning new things that at some point they will start to catch me and I end up on my back. And that is extremely frustrating for me. It may not seem like it with the amount I have borderline broken your backs, Connor, or you have borderline broken me, but I needed you guys to get anywhere. Because wrestling Owen day in and day out with our size difference just didn't work. And and Duncan, my best friend in and outside of wrestling before either of us really could walk. And then later in life, we end up dragging him into this, and yeah. And you're always there, whether it's wrestling, soccer, biking, just my friend since we were babies. I'm also very thankful to all the community supporters of the club. Without your support and donations, myself and the team wouldn't have the opportunities we have. Last but not least, I'd like to thank my parents for getting me up in the morning, driving me to practices, tournaments, and fundraisers. Thank you for telling me to get my shit together when I'm being lazy with my schoolwork and other things. Thanks for putting up with my moods when we're running full swing and I'm beyond overtired. If it were not for you, I would be nowhere close to where I am today. In the end, I am very thankful to everyone who's affected me over the years, and I definitely wish this part of my life wasn't over. But all good things must come to an end. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Anna Frost. Thank you all for participating in this very unusual awards ceremony. I gotta say this isn't exactly how I imagined this night to be, but I'm glad we all still have a way to connect with each other. As some of you may have noticed, I have a quarantine hairdo. Yes, I'm one of those people. Anyway, I first started wrestling in middle school. Back then, I knew nothing about the sport, and I was unsure if it was something I wanted to stick with. But I learned pretty quickly, and soon enough I went to my first big wrestling tournament, the Alberni Invitational, where I won gold. That was when I learned how worthwhile all of my hard work had been. Wrestling only got more difficult from there, but thanks to everyone who supported me throughout my wrestling journey, I was always prepared. I would like to thank James and Russell for encouraging me to join the team and to continue wrestling in high school. Your support has always meant a lot to me. I would like to thank Rochelle for always looking out for me at tournaments and for lending me her boots at provincials when I forgot them my grade 11 year. A big thank you to John and Jeanette for all the hard work they put in throughout the wrestling seasons, and for always being there at so many practices and tournaments. I always know I can count on you guys. And thank you to Chris for helping me tape the many injuries I got, and for helping me win second at nationals in Greco-Roman in my grade 10 year. That's something I'll always remember. I especially want to thank my family for all their love and support. I probably would have quit wrestling after middle school if it hadn't been for my dad. I'm really grateful for all the times my parents drove me to practices and tournaments, especially the ones where we left at ungodly hours in the morning. I don't know if anyone knows this about me, but I'm really shy and I have a difficult time talking to people. Being on the wrestling team has had a huge impact on my confidence level, and it's helped me learn how to be less anxious when talking to others, mostly by forcing me to. There were many times when I wanted to quit wrestling because I didn't feel like I was truly friends with anyone there or that I was even part of the team. I realize now that this isn't the case, and I just need to gain more confidence and learn to be less intimidated by people, and I really have all my teammates to thank for helping me with that. So, in closing, if you're a younger wrestler who's thinking about quitting the team, don't do it. Even if it seems too hard right now, stick with it because this is an amazing group of people and you're going to come out of this experience so much tougher, stronger, and smarter, and you'll just have learned so much from it. Thanks for listening.
Hello everyone, I'm Connor. The amount of fun I've had in wrestling over the last 2 years has definitely made up for how much I had to hear about it before joining. Finally caving in was probably the best decision I've ever made. Stepping into that practice room for the first time in a pair of borrowed boots and not the slightest clue how to wrestle, and the following beating I received really got my heart pumping in a way not much else could. Even more exhilarating though was my first pin at the Cougar Invitational. The feeling of joy that preceded walking off that mat, knowing that my effort, getting twisted and pounded into the floor at practice, had resulted in an achievement, at least to me, was something wondrous. However, wrestling was more than just a way to pass the time for me. It definitely started that way, but as I went deeper into it, it became a huge part of my growth as a person. The times I spent laughing, sweating, and yelling with others gave me the outlet I needed to push on and improve who I was, not only on the mat, but off it too. I never really thought that the decision to join a sport on a whim like this would have resulted in such an incredible payout for me. And you know, I too have a list of people that I have to thank for all their support keeping me going. The coaches I had, whether it was John showing me step by step, Russ giving me passionate yet sometimes confusing instructions, or Chris who often ended up yelling in my corner. I really wouldn't have achieved much if it wasn't for them. My friends in the sport for either beating me down or helping me back up. And way up there is my parents, who kept me on track and kept driving late nights to bring me to the practices I needed to get to. Although I may not have had the same time as everyone else in the sport, I too have been inspired by the passion and the drive that this community has, and I want to thank wrestling for giving me the chance to perform the memories and the goals that I won't ever forget. Thank you.
My wrestling experience had its ups and downs, but mostly downs, that is, until I got to my grade 10 year. That was the first time I ever got to hold a gold medal in my own hands. It was a turning point in my wrestling career. It was like a light switch went off in my head and I finally figured out what to do. That was also the year we made the bet with the coaches. The bet was if we win 2 out of 3 banners at the BCs, they would have to go swimming. Rochelle was the coach that asked me if I was going to be the reason she was going swimming, and I said, yep. That was the year we got to hold the BCs in town. We won all 3 of the banners, and the whole team and coaches went swimming. It was a fun experience, and I wish I could do it over again. In my grade 11 year, I got injured at the Wildcat Open. I was disappointed that I could not wrestle, and it really hurt since I rolled and got my ankle landed on by my opponent. I had to get my coach to help me to the bleachers, and that coach was Chris. I also remember thinking that I could get better by the Campbell River invite. Boy, was I ever wrong. After that, I waited until the Bernie invite to try again. I won all my matches that I had, and it was like I was back. I also am in the highest placing barker at the placing Barker at the BCs. I beat my brother twice. The first time I beat him was the very first time I ever went to the BCs. I got 4th. And then also this year when I got 2nd. I want to thank all my coaches, mostly Rochelle, Jeanette, John, and Chris. I also want to thank my family, my sister for introducing me to wrestling, my dad for driving me to some of the tournaments, and to the high schools to meet the bus. I also want to thank also to my mom for driving me to all of my practices, most all of my practices, and driving me home as well from them, and for being one of my best supporters. I also want to thank my wrestling partners like Andrew and Paige. I'm going to miss all of you guys.
Good evening, everyone. For those who do not know me, my name is Seth Price. When I was a child, I never thought of wrestling as a sport, nor did I ever think I would be standing on a wrestling mat in front of 1,000 people competing in a provincial championship final. I also would have never imagined that a simple childhood activity would shape the person I am today. I started wrestling at a very young age. Growing up with 3 older brothers, I was always wrestling. I remember me and my friends wrestling so much to the point where it wasn't even wrestling anymore. It was a full-on fist fight. I remember me and Mason double kicking each other through trampoline nets, headbutting, biting, anything kind of went. There's something primitive about wrestling, almost like instinct. Wrestling is considered to be the world's toughest sport. Unlike most sports, wrestling gives you the ability to go as far as you want. Your success in the sport depends on how far you are willing to push yourself. I remember spending a lot of my summers training for wrestling. I would travel to Vancouver twice a week, and usually I had a camp every weekend. Sacrificing having fun with friends and relaxing, I would travel to places such as Idaho, Washington, Las Vegas, etc. The training I received at these practices and camps were grueling, unlike any other sport I have competed in. I remember waking up at 5 in the morning on a hot summer's day, going for a 5-mile timed run, and then having 3 intense 2-hour practices in the afternoon. The best reward was crawling to bed at night to rest up for the next day's training. I wouldn't have changed anything about it. The challenge made it fun. Only the tough survive in wrestling. You have to have a different mindset or drive. The whole idea of the sport is for one man to dominate the other. And when you lose, you have to learn how to deal with that pain and frustration. You learn how to use it to drive you and push you harder in your training. Winning is just the same. You have to learn how to be a good winner. Have compassion for others when they lose, and always be humble. Perhaps the most important part of wrestling for me was the friends I've made along the way. Wrestling is more than just a sport, it's a journey. Making friends in the practice room, traveling together, winning together, losing together. It connected us all. Messing around in the hotel rooms, making ice cream towers, making friends with your toughest opponents, and finding role models and people to look up to and learn from. Wrestling to me was like a family, and for some, it might be the only family they have. I have a quote I would like to share from the book, The Wrestler, that really appealed to me. It was a community we had developed as a whole team. Maybe the whole team is not offered the effort or gratitude at the end of the day, but regardless, the whole team was a part of the journey and the success. Fezler, 66. I'd like to take the time to thank all my coaches who sacrificed countless hours away from their own homes and families to make this such a successful program, as well as my personal success. I'd also like to thank all the volunteers and supporters. Without you, we wouldn't have the best tournament in BC. Special thanks to my Nana for all her support and always making sure the coaches were fed, and my Papa for always making sure I had beer money. A big thanks to Tom McAvey for creating such a great program. You truly are changing the lives of youth in the Alberni Valley. Most importantly, I'd like to thank my parents for supporting me 100% in my wrestling journey. Not just in wrestling, but in every aspect of my life. Most importantly, homework. This chapter of my life will forever be unclosed, and it will always be a part of who I am. I owe a huge part of my personal growth and success to wrestling. Wrestling has definitely changed who I am as a person. Thank you.